The inquest into the deaths of 144 Life Esidimeni patients began today in the Pretoria High Court. The patients were part of a group of over 1,000 people moved to non-compliant NGOs. The High Court in Pretoria will consider whether anyone should be held criminally liable for the deaths after the patients were moved to those NGOs in 2015. Joining us tonight is Christine Nxumalo of the Life Esidimeni Family Committee and Executive Director at Section 27, Umunyana Rujeje. Good evening to both of you, and thank you so much for your time. Christine, it's been since 2015 that you, as the families of those that were affected, of those that lost their lives, have been pursuing justice in this matter. Did you ever anticipate that it would take you so long to be able to get what is really basic accountability for the negligence that the state showed?
Evening, Kathy. Thanks for having us. No, never have I actually thought that it would take this long. It's been a very long and very difficult time. So no, never anticipated it would take this long.
What has been the most difficult about it?
It's the fact that 144 people died in the most horrific way, and nothing really was done except for, the process of going through arbitration. But really nothing else has been done in terms of people being charged and held accountable.
Umunyana, that's really part of the indictment here, and I suppose the indictment that not only lies within the government departments but also with our National Prosecuting Authority. There doesn't seem to be any kind of will to truly get to the bottom of how the decisions were made, who made those decisions that ultimately led to the deaths of these individuals.
Thanks for having me, Kathy. As Christine has said, it's been a long, long road. We've been in this fight since the end of 2015 when the announcement was initially made by the then MEC Mahlangu. And this inquest that started today in the Pretoria High Court is intended to see if there's any possibility of criminal charges being brought by the NPA. In 2019, having gone through the record of the arbitration and having done investigation by the SAPS and the NPA actually announced that there was not enough evidence to pursue criminal charges. However, because of the pressure of the family members and the real need of this country to see some resolution to these awful, the torture and awful deaths of very vulnerable people, we have now come to this point where we're starting an inquest. And the outcome could in fact be criminal charges against those who were decision makers and those who were involved in the movement of people who ultimately died.
Ms. Nxumalo, even though, the NPA may dispute the extent to which there are charges that they can bring or cases that they can pursue against some people, we've of course also seen that with some of the officials who were practicing in the Department of Health at the time, they were allowed to, some even going to retirement, without being held liable or accountable for what has happened. How does that make you feel?
Incredibly angry, to be honest with you. Incredibly angry, because it should have really started there, by taking action at that point. But it's also, like you're saying, the NPA, yes, we are at the point of inquest now, but it has also taken them quite a bit of time to get to this point. So yes, it makes me personally incredibly angry to think that life has been normal for these people, and yet 144 people died, and many more died after the fact. So it's amazing that 144 people can die and then it's life as normal.
What has it taken for you and the other families that have been really directly affected by this tragedy that resulted out of this negligence? What has it taken for you to stay together and to continue fighting this cause?
It's how can I put it? It's, that wanting justice. It's basically saying there's no absolute way that my sister is going to die in the way that she died, and no one is held accountable. It's that drive. And like I'm saying, I'm probably one of the lucky ones who were able to bury my sister. So you can only imagine how families feel. It's that accountability. We got to change this culture of people getting away with literally murder.
Umunyana, let me bring you back in here. Just part of the evidence that we heard today, already we saw the legal representative of the then Health Minister, Gadani Mahlangu, saying that this decision was in fact not a decision that she made, but that she was acting on directive coming out of the Premier's office. Do you think that this inquest is going to provide different details in as far as the chain of command is concerned and who individually needs to be held accountable, at least beyond what the investigation of the Ombudsman did?
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is an important process. The lawyers for the MEC Mahlangu, the former MEC, began to talk about the fact that there was no responsibility, that it was not her decision. And that's the same thing she said in the arbitration. However, she must now come and give evidence in this case as well. And there is a real possibility, you can see because she's already putting up a robust defense, that there is a real possibility that criminal liability will result from this process. And also the other decision makers within the department, but there were also the heads of the NGOs, these places where people were taken to. They too must come to this inquest and account and face possible criminal liability as well.
Do you have any expectations of what the work of this inquest needs to be? So what is the end that you would like to see as Section 27?
Look, as Section 27, we have been with the families, as you say, since 2015. And it's important that at every level, at every investigation, at every inquiry, that there is a move to accountability. These people all have constitutional obligations to protect life. Some of them have professional responsibility to protect life. They were healthcare professionals. Indeed, Dr. Silebano has faced an inquiry at the Health Professions Council of South Africa, the HPCSA. That is a process that also hasn't concluded. There was a postponement earlier this year of his own disciplinary process. So there are all of these processes that are happening at the same time, and none of them seem to be coming to conclusion. We envisage that this proceeding, the inquest, will carry on for several weeks, and we will see the evidence that comes through. We will see new witnesses that we haven't seen before being examined by the prosecutor and cross-examined by the representatives of the families and others. And at the end of the day, we need to see, as a country, we need to see some serious accountability. And as Christine has said, the families want to see criminal liability. So there are other levels of accountability, but ultimately we need to see people be charged, go through a trial that is fair, obviously, and we cannot look to preempt any of those processes. But this is a really critical moment for us to get through this process so that we can see from here whether there are criminal charges to be brought, and indeed to make sure that they are brought by the NPA.
Mr. Nxumalo, perhaps a final word from you then, in your own words, about the expectations of yourselves as families where this inquest is concerned.
As families, Kathy, we're hoping that this inquest will direct the evidence to particular individuals. And obviously, ultimately, at the end, the judge ruling that there was criminal liability and that they should be charged. But what actually, just talking to you now and listening to Umunyana talk, I just realized something, that as South Africans, we suffer, and yet we've got the greatest constitution. You know, when the Ombudsman put out his report, for the first time I actually felt, oh, wow, you know, things can actually happen. if we have the right people in place. And then we had the former Chief Justice Moseneke and his ruling as well. And then there was this gap. So it makes you wonder as an individual, and if a person as vulnerable as my others could die under such circumstances and nothing be done, what about others, who don't have the voice? So for us, it's got to be criminal accountability, because otherwise, how are we going to learn as a society, really, in general?
Christine Ngumalo of the Life Esidimeni Family Committee, and Umunyana Rujeje, who is with Section 27. That inquest getting started today, as you heard. It will be on for some weeks still, and lots of expectations from Section 27 and the families in terms of what the outcome of this inquest should be.